Welcome to the S&D 50 podcast, week 11. Spencer, for someone tuning in for the first time, what makes this show different from other ranking systems?
Well, Drew, this is a rating system that seeks to find a new way to evaluate how teams compare against each other objectively. It doesn't take into account bias, expected performance about their conference. It just looks at what you do on the field and who you do it against and how you do over the course of a season to try and spit out a bias-free, merit-based resume rating. And then we take all those ratings, we stack them up, and we get the numbers of the S&D 50.
What are we drinking tonight, Spencer?
You know, we're going for a repeat here. Back in the Spindrift arena with Nojito. That is their lime and mint flavor. It's a personal favorite.
Jacob, how are you?
I'm doing great, Andrew. It is so good to be back with you and Spencer talking college football in an exciting week in college football, as here the SND is being released on the same day as the college football playoff committee rankings. So we get to see how wrong the committee gets it tonight.
That's right. That's right.
The reason we created this system was to give a view of what college football would look like if you only counted performance of teams and who they played. Thank you to every single one of you who subscribe, who like, who watch our videos. You guys are the best. We are so happy to have all of you here. Share this with your friends. Again, if you're listening on podcasts, this is a YouTube show. We're going to be talking like you're looking at these graphics. Week 10 games to watch. These were the games that the model identified as competitive, teams that had similar S&D ratings. The model this week went 6 for 12 in identifying competitive games. Spencer, what happens to teams when we get a result that is not competitive?
Yeah, if we expect two teams to be competitive and the game is not competitive, not only will the winning team get a sizable boost in the model because they beat someone who we saw as having a similar resume and they beat them soundly, they'll jump up pretty well. But the losing team will also take a pretty sizable hit. The model is not very forgiving for taking a loss in a game where you should have been competitive.
The model identified correctly FIU, Missouri State, Arizona State, Iowa State, Army, and Air Force. It did not get Buffalo and Bowling Green correct, Central Florida and Baylor, and East Carolina and Temple correct. More to come on those teams later in the show. Delaware gets crushed by Liberty, not competitive. Louisiana and South Alabama, competitive. Central Michigan and Western Michigan, competitive. Arizona and Colorado, the least competitive game on our 12-game slate of competitive games. Oklahoma and Tennessee, competitive. And Cincinnati and Utah, obviously not competitive if you watched that game. For the season, the model is 68% in identifying competitive games against closely rated opponents. Week 11, teams out of the S&D 50. These are the 4 teams that fell out of the S&D 50 between week 10 and week 11. Wake Forest is now at number 72. They fell 34 spots after losing to Florida State. Auburn now at 64. Lost to Kentucky 10-3. Hugh Freeze got fired. UNLV at 62, down 25 spots, lost to New Mexico. Iowa State at 58, down 12 spots. Our honorable mentions for Week 11. These are the 5 teams that did not make the S&D 50 in Week 11 that we still want to talk about. At number 110, Oregon State.
How about Oregon State coming in already not bowl eligible? They were 1-7 going into this game. And they took Washington State down 10-7. I mean, Washington State 2 weeks ago was super competitive and almost pulled off an upset against Ole Miss. Then the week after, they were super competitive and almost pulled off an upset against Virginia, only to go home and suffer outright defeat at the hands of your, I guess, closest rival at this point. But yeah, that was a rough week to be Washington State Cougar. It was a great week to be an Oregon State fan.
Western Kentucky at number 69.
In second place in Conference USA, and Tyson Helton, here in his 7th year as the head coach at Western Kentucky, the dude has built a resume there. 7 years, he's been to 6 bowl games. He will go to, obviously, to another bowl game this year, already having 7 wins under his belt. Now, the one thing that seems to be evading him is a Conference USA championship, yet to win one. But if he wins his last 2 games in Conference USA, one against Middle Tennessee, they should do work with them, but then they wrap up the season against Jacksonville State, who right now is undefeated in Conference USA, but a win against them would give them the tiebreaker and a spot in the championship game. And Tyson Helton might be able to get his first ever Conference USA championship.
At number 68, Arkansas State. Butch Jones has the boys playing great with a huge win against Troy.
Guys, we all wrote Arkansas State off when they started 1-4. Only win was against an FCS team. They got blown out by Arkansas. They lost a close game to Iowa State. Remember that, guys?
One was close. Iowa State traveling to Jonesboro and almost losing?
Exactly. And everyone was questioning Iowa State because everyone thought Iowa State was a top 10 team back then. But as we're seeing things progress, Arkansas State and Iowa State aren't that different as we see Iowa State in the 50s and Arkansas State here at 68. They also lost a close one to Kennesaw to start the year. And we all wrote them off thinking Kennesaw was terrible and Arkansas State just lost to a terrible team. Well, Kennesaw State's in the top 50 of the SND. Now, the one kind of inexplainable loss that they had was to ULM, which ULM started off 3-1, but now they're sitting at 3-6. But since that loss, they've reeled off 4 straight wins, back-to-back 1-point wins over Texas State and South Alabama to get that streak rolling. And then they cleaned the house with Georgia Southern and Troy. Now they're 4-1 in the Sun Belt West. They got a huge matchup coming up this week with the undefeated Southern Miss Sun Belt team, undefeated in Sun Belt play. That's this week. And if they get a win against Southern Miss, that would put them in the driver's seat for a spot in the Sun Belt championship game.
A chance to likely go play James Madison in that one.
At number 57, Florida State.
How I don't know what to say here about Florida State other than the fact that they dominated Wake Forest and they still aren't in the S&D 50. This 4-4 team has been all over the map. There are teams with more losses than Florida State ranked higher in the S&D 50. I'll say that right now. There's a 5-loss team in the S&D 50, and it's because there are teams who, when they lose, they're losing to great teams. They're playing super competitive games. Florida State, meanwhile, can blow out and get blown out, and it's just crazy to see how their season has gone.
All right, Spencer, let me give you 2 stats that Florida State has.
Let's hear it.
On their side. Most recently, they ended a winless streak of 406 days without an ACC win.
Congrats to the Seminoles.
Over a year since they last won a game in the ACC. And here's one stat that blew my mind. They're 7th in the country in scoring offense still. So I'm not sure what that says about their defense, but top 10 scoring offense in the country. That means they're dangerous. They're dangerous.
This is a team that laid more than 30 points on Alabama at the beginning of the year. But it's just been inconsistency after inconsistency after inconsistency. So, I don't know. I think 4-4, they've got a shot to go 8-4, really mess things up for people in the ACC. But I don't know that they have a realistic path to the ACC title game at this point. But then again, that conference is wide open.
4 losses there. It's not that wide open, Spencer. You're not going to make the title game with 4 losses in conference play.
I guess that's true. Yeah, they're pretty far down that list. Things would have to really go sideways for some of the teams at the top. Which, hey, you never know. It's the ACC.
At number 55, UTSA pulls off the unthinkable and crushes Tulane.
Well, Spencer, for your point just right here, we have an American 4-4 team above an ACC Florida State 4-4.
Mm-hmm.
But on top of that, UTSA, I just learned this. Under head coach Traylor, UTSA has improved to 22-0 in regular season conference home games.
Whoa.
Ooh,
If you are in the American,
and that's got to be 3
might as-
years.
you just chalk up an L when you go to the Alamo Dome. In fact, this is, I guess, turned into a controversy in the American Conference because Coach John Sumrall of Tulane, before the game happened, made a comment where he said, quote, "I think they may pipe some noise in through the speakers." He went on to say, "I don't think it's legal. I don't think anybody's investigating it. We've just got to be ready to deal with it." That's helped create a home field advantage for them.
Oof.
Anyways, Coach Traylor and UTSA did not take kindly to what Coach Sumrall said, and UTSA boat raced the Tulane Green Wave, who everyone thought was going to be the representative of the G5, myself included. And now the American has just been shook up once again, and we have no idea who's going to come out of that conference.
Yeah, we'll have to get into the American race later, but it is I would
Wide
say,
open.
Yeah, we say that about the ACC. It gets said about the Big 12 every year, but I mean, I think American has more one-loss teams than anyone else, and no one is undefeated in league play. So
Tulane was the last standing undefeated in league play, and the Alamo Dome and the Roadrunners put an end to that.
Before we unveil the 50, we want to invite anyone listening who's not subscribed to subscribe. We get hundreds of you watching every week. We know you love the show. Subscribe. Also, if you want all 136 teams with their S&D rating for all weeks 1 through 11, subscribe to our Patreon. Thank you to all of our Patreon subscribers. At number 50, S&D 50, week 11, we have New Mexico, new to the S&D 50.
yeah, first time this season we've seen the Lobos crack it. That was a good win over UNLV.
Guys, Jason Eck, before the game, showed his team fight clips of like MMA and boxing scenes, like fights going on, and he told him he was showing them the clips because he says he wants to show them how you just got to keep getting off the mat when you get knocked down. And if you watch that game against UNLV, it was back and forth between those two teams. Great analogy of an MMA fight.
Huge win for New Mexico when it comes to the Mountain West Conference Championship race. At number 49, Nebraska.
Nebraska with a homestand, a chance to keep their playoff hopes alive. Yes, legitimate playoff hopes alive if you can be a 2-loss Big Ten team. No more after taking the loss against USC. That was a really close game. I feel like people aren't going to give it the respect it deserves from the USC perspective and what that does to USC's resume when they're weighing 2-loss teams against each other if they make it that far. But Nebraska's a really good team. Dylan Raiola getting hurt, though, breaking his fibula, that's a bind for Matt Rule and the rest of the season. They could easily drop the last 3 games. The good news is they're already bowl eligible, but they could lose out.
At number 48, back in the S&D 50, Baylor crushes UCF.
Duh, Bears. Sorry, wrong sport. Or rather, wrong tier.
You know, Baylor, gosh, they've been hanging around in the S&D 50 as we see they're back, and they get a bye this week, and then they get Utah at home.
Whew.
And I think they could cause some troubles for Utah if Utah is not on their A game.
Utah has been really strong at home this season, but they haven't had any really hard road tests. They've played both of their hardest opponents at home, and they got blown out by Texas Tech and crushed Cincinnati. So we'll see with a legitimate road test how they perform.
At number 47, back in the S&D 50, the Mississippi State Bulldogs. They're back. People don't like that very much.
No, people love making fun of the Bulldogs. And the fact of the matter is they have a good team. The SEC is a gauntlet. They've lost a lot of close games, but this is a good team. And the SND was on to Mississippi State early, and we're seeing it now that it wasn't wrong. It's a good team that deserves some respect and not just a bunch of laughs, Spencer.
No, I'm not laughing. I'm laughing a little bit, but Mississippi State has a great win under their belt in non-conference play. One of the best that any SEC team has this season. And that's their opening week win against Arizona State. But this win against Arkansas was super impressive because they won in Fayetteville by the exact same margin of victory, nearly the same score as Texas A&M did 2 weeks ago. Arkansas is not a cupcake team. They are hard to beat, and Mississippi State got it done.
And they did it with Blake Shapen. He went down in the third quarter, missed most of the third quarter. They had a backup QB come in, a true freshman, and he led them down for Camario Taylor, led them to 2 touchdowns while Shapen was out in the third quarter, kept them in the game, and then Shapen came in the fourth and finished the job, led them back from 14 down, got the game-winning touchdown with less than a minute left on a 4th and 4. Beautiful game. Great SEC atmosphere.
Love to
Let's
see
go
it.
Bulldogs.
Ring the bells. At number 46, Houston.
Yeah, Houston had 1 loss in league play. They had a clear path to the Big 12 title game that didn't even include, if I remember right, it did not include any of the big contenders. They didn't have to play Texas Tech. They already played Texas Tech. That was their 1 loss up to this point.
BYU.
They didn't have to play BYU.
No Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm.
No Utah.
They were ready to just be there with 1 loss and hoping they get a tiebreaker that falls their way. Which in the Big 12 is super likely. And now, almost certainly out of contention, despite only 2 losses on the year.
At number 45, Kansas State, yo-yoing around, loses to Texas Tech big.
They lose big, but they only drop 1 spot. And this is one of those 5-loss teams in the S&D 50 that we talked about. And it's because despite getting blown out, they played really well, and they have been playing really well. So that 46-point drop that you see in their rating is only partially how they were affected by the results this week. For their own score, they actually dropped 74 points. But because of their past opponent adjustment, which is the adjustment that our model does when you beat teams that win games, they got 28 points added back. And so they go into a bye week this week. Texas Tech has a huge game against BYU. If Texas Tech wins that game, Kansas State will get an additional boost. Not very much because they lost this game, but they'll get a little bit of almost like a strength of schedule adjustment if Texas Tech wins this weekend.
At number 44, SMU. What a win.
Guys, I love the ACC this year. It is so wide open. I love that SMU beat Miami. I love that SMU's right in the mix to win the ACC again, and they could be in the playoffs with 3 losses. Say they run the table.
That would be crazy. Now SMU, this is interesting. I want to have a model moment here real quick. SMU beat Miami, a fellow S&D 50 team. Now, we didn't have Miami in the top 10, to be clear. If you're listening for the first time, you might see SMU only moving up 3 spots and say that doesn't make any sense. We have Miami down in the 20s already. Miami's still ahead of them, by the way, because they didn't overcome that gap. But you'll see SMU dropped 15 points. And Drew, if you can bring up our SMU details real quick. SMU, over the course of the season, has had a couple of really good wins in league play. They beat Miami, who's currently number 30 in the model, and they beat Clemson. Clemson is number 77 in the model. Outside of that, all of their other wins are rated lower than 77. So despite the fact that they've looked really good, They have 3 losses, 2 notable losses outside of league play against TCU, who's ranked 23rd this week, and Baylor, who we just saw at 48. And then their recent loss to Wake Forest. But that recent loss is what I want to talk about. For beating Miami, but not dominating Miami, SMU got 73.9 points added to their rating. Because of that bad loss to Wake Forest, followed up by Wake Forest getting completely demolished by an even lower rated Florida State team, SMU took an 88-point drop to their rating because that gap was so bad and that loss was so bad. It basically devalued SMU's loss even more, saying that loss is even worse. And so overall, they netted a loss of 15 points. They currently sit at 7th in the ACC in our model.
At number 43, this is where it gets very spicy, folks. Memphis at 43. The AP poll this week has Memphis at 22.
Why?
I love the S&D because it gives respect to the G5 teams that deserve respect. But it's funny that the AP poll gives all the respect in the world to Memphis, but the S&D has zero respect. Yeah, I mean, 43 is still adequate. You're a good team, but you're not top 20.
Yeah, I don't think they have the resume to say, hey, yeah, we're 8-1, but we definitely are the best G5 team. I mean, they're 22 solely on the back of that win against South Florida, right? They have a bad loss against UAB. And at the same time, like, who else have they beaten? They've a win against that Arkansas team, but it was a home game, and Arkansas was on the heels of a bad loss. Like, I think Memphis is just not all it shakes up to be. I really like them here at 43. I think it's the right spot.
At number 42, Boise State ahead of Memphis.
After a terrible loss to Fresno State. And Boise is reeling right now, guys. 3 losses in Boise is unacceptable. This was their fewest point total. They only scored 7 points for those looking at the YouTube graphic. 7 points, the fewest point total in Mountain West play since they've joined the Mountain West. They lost their starting quarterback in the first quarter. And Spencer Danielson came out and said it's going to be a while until he gets back, whatever that means. Boise fans want their offensive coordinator fired, Nate Potter. They felt like Ashton Genty was a crutch for him last year that made him look better than he actually was, just relying on a once-in-a-lifetime running back talent. And they think their offense is getting exposed this year. And now with their starting QB going down, yikes. They got a bye before San Diego State, but we have yet to see San Diego State in these rankings. So obviously they will be ahead of Boise.
At number 41, Kennesaw State.
I watched that game against UTEP. Kennesaw State looked good. I liked watching them play. They are fun.
You see that they got a 2 QB system going for them, and they've been doing that all year long.
It's crazy. I love it.
4 running backs have ran over 200 yards for them. They got 18 sacks on the season. Kennesaw State just is doing it as a team. There's really not any individual stars standing out, but boy, it's fun to see them just climbing the ranks every week.
At number 40, Tulane. They were the highest rated G5 team last week. I say it every week. The G5 is a dog-eat-dog world, and it happens again.
I got one more quote for you guys from this game. Jake Retzloff was mic'd up before the game, and he said, I tell you what, I'm 1-0 in this stadium, so something's got to give, and it's not going to be me.
That's rough.
Retzlaff was referring to his Alamo Bowl win as the BYU quarterback last year.
Oh yeah, they destroyed Colorado in that game. Maybe it turns out it was the team and not just the quarterback.
It's a noise.
I mean, but would UTSA do that for a bowl game? Come on.
Sure they would. At number 39, back in the S&D 50, East Carolina.
We teed this up last week. We talked about East Carolina and Hawaii fell out of the S&D 50 last week because they were on a bye and had been passed by teams who won. Both teams played. Hawaii, you're not seeing them here. They did not win. They got crushed. East Carolina, you see right back here jumping in, beating Temple, who was surging late. Not late in the game, but surging lately. And 45-14, it was not even close. East Carolina, comfortable win in that game. Also, East Carolina, one of several teams in the American with only one loss in league play. I think that is up to 6 right now. 6 teams in the American with one loss in league play.
Funny to see how the model puts a 3-loss East Carolina team over a 1-loss Memphis team. Also hypothetical, would the College Football Playoff Committee put a 3-loss East Carolina American champion team in for the G5 playoff spot?
No, actually, I don't think they would. I think if every other conference champion has 3 losses, then maybe, like out of the G5. But if the American Conference champion has non-conference losses to BYU, who admittedly could be a playoff team, and NC State, who is not going to be a playoff team, even if they win out, they would be a 10-3 team with a conference title win, and they would probably be passed by, in my opinion, the Sun Belt champion.
East Carolina essentially on a bye this week. They play Charlotte.
Oh, rude.
Thank you, Andrew.
But hey, speaking of that little dynamic with Memphis, they play Memphis in 2 weeks.
They'll have plenty of time to prepare for Memphis then. At number 38, Duke with a great win against Clemson. Duke had Dabo Sweeney screaming so loud you could hear him yelling at his defense from the press box TV broadcast.
Oh, how about his post-game comments where he's like, I could get fired. I don't know. He points at the athletic director at the back of the room. He's like, he's back here right now.
Tough time in Clemson, but to Duke's point, Duke is doing stuff in the ACC, and it's fun to see that happen.
Another team that's still alive for a conference championship. Duke, your playoff hopes are not dead.
At number 37, LSU.
Brian Kelly-less.
This week they have Alabama. We'll talk about that when we get to Alabama in these rankings. But again, LSU is a job you want because here LSU is still at 37.
And
with
hey,
3 losses.
They're undefeated without Brian Kelly as their coach.
And the governor of Louisiana
He is must-watch television. I kid you not.
has been speaking up.
So yes, the governor stepped in and said, I am tired of the same guy, this athletic director for LSU, who did Jimbo Fisher's deal and now Brian Kelly's deal. And the reason why, guys, was because there was a clause put in this buyout at the beginning of the contract that if donors or other people didn't pay for this Brian Kelly buyout, the state of Louisiana and its citizens are on the hook to pay
Taxes.
this entire buyout. Yes.
Ugh, that's
Taxes
sickening.
are paying his buyout.
And that's what got put in the agreement, and it's gross. And the governor stepped in and put his foot down, and I say good on him.
Yeah, now the good thing, or the other thing to keep in mind with this is the governor only stepped in as well because LSU, in addition to not having a coach or an AD, does not have a president. So typically, the school would have a president who would manage all this stuff, but they don't even have one of those. And so the next highest authority after that is the governor. So kind of a wild situation at LSU. A little bit chaotic. Lane, stay away. You don't want this one.
At number 36, yes, you're reading that right if you're on YouTube, San Diego State at 36.
Bringing the Mountain West home. This is the best team in the Mountain West, hands down. Their only loss is, honestly, in retrospect, a boggling loss against Washington State. So I really like the Aztecs right now to win the Mountain West. They could be another team that if the American collapses, they could be another team looking for that spot as a 12-1 Mountain West Conference champion.
And they've pitched 3 shutouts this year.
Whew. That is a lot.
This week, they have a huge game against Hawaii.
Yep, Hawaii currently 2 losses in conference play. That'll be a big one.
At number 35, as you can see, we have rattled off a slew of G5 teams ahead of Memphis. 35, Navy takes their first loss against North Texas.
Horvath is a baller. I wouldn't rule Navy out of the American yet.
Love it. At number 34, another American team ahead of Memphis, South Florida. This week, they have UTSA, guys. Oh, boy.
Hey, question for you. Is that a road game?
It's at South Florida.
Ooh. Well, then, I mean, I guess they have a chance without all that crowd noise. Or rather, the crowd noise on their side. It's my new favorite conspiracy theory.
It's a great conspiracy theory. At number 33, Florida gives Georgia a run for their money, only dropping a spot.
This is our highest rated team with a losing record. And it's because their wins include wins against Mississippi State, who we've already talked about, and Texas. And just wait until we find out where Texas is in these ratings. Their losses are all against teams in the S&D 50. So had they flipped the script on any of those games, they would be quite a bit higher. And unfortunately, you know, they have those losses. I don't think that they have a realistic path to an SEC title at this point. I don't think that they have, you know, they may not even have a path to a bowl game. They have 2 games left against teams we still haven't talked about. And so they could easily finish 5-7, but they are a really good team, despite all of the challenges they've had, despite losing Billy Napier.
This week, Florida has Kentucky.
Cakewalk? Question mark?
Don't tell Hugh Freeze that.
I mean, this is a Kentucky team that almost beat Texas. So we'll see.
At number 32, just lurking around the Big 12 title race, Arizona State.
Sam Leavitt ruled out for the rest of the season. They got former 5-star QB Jeff Sims, who has been around the block. Started off at Georgia Tech, been to a couple schools in between, and now here he is at Arizona State, Nebraska. And here he is at Arizona State, and he looks like he will be leading the Sun Devils the rest of the way through.
See, this is a team, though, you talk about lurking. They don't control their destiny. They're going to have to hope for a convoluted tiebreaker among 2 lost conference teams to try and make that title game.
Arizona State's on a bye this week. At number 31, Tennessee. They lose to Oklahoma. We said it last week. Tennessee, currently in the AP poll this week, is number 23. We have them at 31.
There is an AP poll voter who has Tennessee, 6-3 Tennessee, ranked 15th right now.
That's a crime.
I'm serious. I cannot believe that this is real, but it is real. I just don't know what you see. I mean, okay, who is Tennessee's best win?
Mississippi State.
It's got to be Mississippi State. And we have Mississippi State in the 50, but they're all the way at the bottom of the 50, which means they're not even approaching anyone's AP poll, right? I don't see what people love about this Tennessee team. You shouldn't get this much credit for losing close. That's what I have to say. You should get credit for winning games.
Another team that's very questionable at number 30, Miami. Miami in this week's AP poll is number 18.
They finally took their first trip out of the Sunshine State and took a loss.
Week 10. Took till week 10 of the season to leave Florida.
I don't know if that's...
I mean, I don't know if it's worse, but it's almost more impressive to get all your road games in your same state until this point in the year.
At number 29, Illinois beats Rutgers. They are still good. Better than Miami.
I just think 3 losses basically disqualifies you from the playoffs.
Southern Miss. They were on a bye last week. This week they have Arkansas State. We talked about Arkansas State already. Big game for Southern Miss to flex its muscle.
I mean, Southern Miss is undefeated in league play. It's just them and James Madison. What hurts them is they have 2 non-conference losses. One, we've mentioned this team a bunch today. Opening game loss at home against Mississippi State. And then the other is a road game against Conference USA, Louisiana Tech.
And like we said earlier with Arkansas State, huge game this week to decide the fate of the Sun Belt West against the Red Wolves.
At number 27, Georgia Tech stumbles against NC State.
You know who did not stumble? NC State's running game.
At number 26, a team that the three of us love so much, the Pitt Panthers. They beat Stanford.
Undefeated since putting in a true freshman as quarterback.
We get to number 25 in the S&D 50, and here is Iowa.
Top 25.
Let's
Iowa
go!
Hawkeyes. Their fans have been calling for it for how many weeks now?
Well,
the
here's your
S&D
credit.
has you. Your credit is here.
For context, Georgia Tech is 16 in the AP poll this week. Iowa should be ranked. Iowa here, 25.
Well, you want to know my favorite little buzzy thing? I like, you have a lot of beat writers and people who can't pay attention to the whole sport. But there is one writer, one AP voter who has Iowa not only in the top 25, they have them in the top 20. They have them at number 18, and it's the writer from the Cedar Rapids Gazette. Like backyard bias much?
It's hilarious.
Ooh, it's a sellout. I don't know if you guys saw that. The Kinnick Field is sold out for this game.
It's going to be such a big game for the Big Ten. I would love to go to Kinnick Stadium. We will go there someday when this show makes enough money. At number 24, Vanderbilt with an inexplicable loss to Texas.
Team that won't go away, those Texas Longhorns. I mean, the craziest thing about this is that score is reflective of a comeback for the ages that was all of 3 feet or less maybe from materializing if Vanderbilt had only gotten that onside kick that everyone has seen by now. So close and yet so far.
My question lies is I'd be curious to know what the S&D rated this game for competitiveness.
I'll tell you. We've talked before about how, if you surge late and you almost make a game close, then it doesn't necessarily affect the overall competitiveness rating of a game. And that's what you would see. If you had told me this game was 34-31 a few weeks, going into the game, I would have guessed that this game would have a competitive rating somewhere in the neighborhood of like 90 or maybe even up to 100. This game only had a competitive rating of 62.0.
Nice.
Which, according to our model, would not be considered a competitive game. And if you only watch the first 3 quarters, you would fully understand why.
The threshold is 70 for a competitive game.
Mm-hmm.
At number 23, up 6 spots, we have TCU. TCU currently unranked in the AP poll. This week they have Iowa State.
Not only is TCU unranked, I'm not even sure they got any votes. I mean, that's wild to me. They're a 2-loss team and they don't have a single vote in the AP poll.
At number 22, another team not in the AP poll, James Madison, puts the beat down on Texas State.
Sunbelt favorite, seemingly on a collision course with Southern Miss. Southern Miss has to clean up some stuff on its own in the Western Division before that becomes a reality. But James Madison has looked dominant in conference play.
James Madison is our second highest group of 5 team ranked in the S&D 50 this week. Deserves more credit than they're getting nationally.
Yeah, they're higher than all but one team out of the American. And this is a really good team. The Dukes are not to be messed with.
At number 21, Missouri. They were on a bye in week 10. This week, Missouri has Texas A&M.
I think without Bo Prabula, I just think that they may cap at 6 wins. Bo Prabula was really good, and losing him really hurts.
At number 20, Washington. They were on a bye in week 10. This week, Washington has Wisconsin. Do we call that another bye?
Maybe
Maybe.
for fear of disrespect is a road game. That's
Not if you're Oregon.
Pending weather. Pending weather might be a bye.
I don't even know what to think of the Huskies, guys. I don't. 6-2 going into a bye. They're the Big Ten team no one is talking about, but you could still make noise and upset teams such as Oregon coming up.
I mean, Damon Williams is really good. You know, he's got over 2,000 passing yards, 14 touchdowns already. It is a road game at Wisconsin. That, you know, that's something to be mindful of in the Big Ten, where you have these long trips and road games. But fortunately, they had the bye to get ready for it. They then get their last 3 games on the West Coast, 2 home games and a road game at UCLA. But that final against Oregon could have serious playoff implications if Washington wins its next 3.
At number 19, Oklahoma, huge win against Tennessee, but even bigger, a bye week in week 11 to let John Mateer continue to get healthy.
We talk about this sometimes that, you know, this is a bias-free, merit-based rating system. This is one of those times where I actually think we've got Oklahoma a little too low. I think the Sooners are really good, and they're one bad game against Texas from being in the top 10 likely.
At number 18, Cincinnati. Cincinnati in the AP poll this week is number 25. Huge loss to Utah. At number 17, USC. They beat Nebraska. I don't think if you're a Trojans fan, you left that game feeling super confident about your offense and the ability to score, but USC's still winning. At number 16, Jacob, does this not bring a smile to your face? North Texas, our highest rated group of 5 team in week 11. They beat Navy. You said it last week. The American Championship is absolutely in play. North Texas 8-1.
And Drew Mestemaker, the man who didn't even start for his high school football team, is 3rd in the country in passing yards and leads the 2nd best scoring offense in the country, averaging 44 points a game. North Texas, baby.
I think there's a very high likelihood we could see North Texas in the college football playoff. At number 15, the Oregon Ducks, presently number 6 in the week 11 AP poll. They sit here at 15. They can really make some movement upward with a win against Iowa this week.
I think we might be the only people making any kind of poll or rating that doesn't have Oregon in the top 10 right now.
That's why I'm here.
Oregon fans don't like it, but it makes sense. It makes sense.
I mean, I keep an eye on like the AP voter tabs. The lowest they're at in the AP is 11. It's a voter out of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. They got a couple of 10s, but man, they're as high as 4th, you know?
And we shall see. Iowa will be a big game. At number 14, Michigan, with a shaky win against Purdue. Michigan at 14 is one of those teams where I say, okay, it feels a little high, but here we are.
Funny you say shaky, because if you just follow Dave Portnoy's Twitter, you would think that they utterly dominated Purdue in the second half.
Gotta love Dave. But Michigan this week on a bye, just getting ready for that next big game at the end of the year against Ohio State. That's what it leads up to. At number 13, my neighbor recently this week corrected me. It's Louisville. Louisville has a scare against Virginia Tech, but they come out on top.
Yeah, at what point does somebody go from being my dark horse to just straight up being the team?
Well, week 10 was the answer. Week 10 now has Louisville in the driver's seat. Spencer was right. Jacob and I were wrong. Here he is. Take your victory lap, Spencer.
The thing is, they have one league loss. They have one loss overall. Their only loss of the season is to Virginia, who's the only undefeated team in ACC play. I don't even know if Louisville controls their own destiny, though. That's how wild the ACC is.
Speaking of Virginia, Virginia's at number 12. This is the only team that matches the AP poll and the S&D 50 this week. Virginia at 12. A moment of silence for matching the AP poll. Thank you.
Here's what I'll say about the ACC race. We've gotten all of our ACC teams out now. Virginia, we have at 12. They're the highest rated ACC team. You've got Virginia with no losses, and then Georgia Tech, Pittsburgh, Louisville, SMU, and Duke, all with one loss in league play. Louisville, who we were just talking about, only plays one of those teams in SMU. SMU also only plays one of those teams. There's a bunch of little silos of teams that do and don't play each other. And so, you could have Georgia Tech lose to Pittsburgh and you'd have a one-loss Pittsburgh and a one-loss Louisville, or a one-loss Pittsburgh and a one-loss SMU and an undefeated Virginia. I don't know enough about ACC tiebreakers, but it feels like that's where it's headed.
At number 11, Texas Tech. Big win against Kansas State. They move up 6 spots. And now we get into our first controversy. The S&D 50 top 10. Oh no, Utah at 10. They are up 10 spots, 1 spot ahead of Texas Tech. Spencer, what's going on? Oh my gosh, what is going on? Utah lost to Texas Tech. Why are they ahead?
What's happening here is that Utah played Texas Tech like a month ago. And our model does not assume every game happened at the same time. People talk about this when they talk about should Notre Dame be ranked higher than Miami, even though Notre Dame lost to Miami and they both have 2 losses? Well, time matters, and the passage of time matters. And you're a different team in November than you were in October, and you're a different team in October than you were in September. And Utah right now is dominating. They just took a Cincinnati team whose only loss was to Nebraska on like a quote-unquote neutral field, and just destroyed them. And yes, it was at home. And yes, everyone saw it coming. The line was 10.5. But Utah said, that line, let's double it. Let's triple it. Let's go ahead and show that we came to play in the Big 12. So Utah, for this win against Texas Tech, got 205 points. Utah, for their win against Cincinnati, got 205 points straight up. Texas Tech, for beating Kansas State, only got 76. So that disparity is what let Utah jump Texas Tech, and now they have a rating gap from 11 to 10 of more than 100 points. Texas Tech, though, plays a top 10 team this week. If they win, they'll jump Utah.
Texas at number 9. They have the most points from their own result. They get 265 points straight up for beating Vanderbilt.
Yeah, they looked really good in this game. They got that many points because of how dominant they were. Had they lost the game, they actually would have gotten punished pretty hard for blowing a lead. Our model will punish you for blowing a lead. But, they were able to turn what was a dominant game into a huge number of points. I mean, just blowing out a top 10 team. I don't know if that is enough of a justification to put them back in the top 10, but our model thought so.
At number 8, Georgia. They beat Florida. It took late 4th quarter play to close it out, come back and win, but Georgia does it. They're here at 8, and there's another controversy, our second one in the top 10. Georgia behind Ole Miss. What is going on?
Well, we'll get to Ole Miss in a second now, but here's what I'll say about Georgia right now. Remember this when we get to Ole Miss. Georgia is 7-1. They have played 8 of their 12 games.
At number 7, Notre Dame. They beat Boston College. They didn't beat them by enough, it feels, but here they are at 7.
And they only got 63 points for that win, and they actually only got 13 points for beating Boston College. The other 50 they got were for past opponent adjustments of teams they beat winning their games. But man, Notre Dame, those 2 losses, they are really wishing now that Miami is starting to collapse that they could turn the clock back and get that one back. I'll tell you what.
Is Notre Dame a better job than LSU?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so, for stability purposes.
Then how is Marcus Freeman being rumored as one of the leading candidates for the LSU job?
Because
And why
people,
did Brian Kelly leave Notre Dame for LSU?
well, I don't know about why Brian Kelly left for LSU, but I'm a guessing it has to do with the dollar signs and not an accent that he never had. I don't know. That's my best LSU. That's my best Louisiana accent.
It's a good question. I don't know,
And
Jacob. I'll be brief. I have no idea. At number 6, Ole Miss. They beat South Carolina handily. They are at number 6. Georgia is at number 8. Another situation people will question, but we have answers.
Yeah, we have answers. I don't know if people are going to like our answers, but the simplest way of putting it is that Ole Miss is 8-1 and Georgia is 7-1. Our model takes in data points to determine who the best teams are, right? Our model gives you points for how you perform in each game. It gives you points if you win. It takes away points if you get beat. It takes away points if you stink in a game. You're not going to earn anything if you're not scoring. And so Ole Miss scores. Ole Miss plays well. Ole Miss plays good teams who then score and play well. So they get a positive past opponent adjustment. For beating South Carolina, they got 52 points. They also got another 55 added to their opponent adjustment for past opponents they played. Part of that, was credit for Georgia. Even though they lost that game, they get a little bit of credit. Georgia got more credit from Ole Miss than Ole Miss got from Georgia. But all of this is to say Ole Miss has played 9 games. Georgia's only played 8. They have a whole extra data point to add to their rating. When you mix that in with the timing of when each team played each other and when they played their good and bad opponents and how that affected their rating, that's where you get a situation where Ole Miss is 6 and Georgia's 8, and they have a rating gap of about 117 points between them. That rating gap can close very fast. If you're Georgia, your next game is against Mississippi State on the road. Probably not a huge opportunity, but then you host Texas in 2 weeks. You better believe if Georgia rocks Texas, they're going to get a huge boost to their rating for that win. And so the gap could close. If these teams both end up this season 12-1, I would be shocked if Ole Miss was still ahead of Georgia. I mean, if you're Georgia, your best win is against Ole Miss. Your second best win is, I guess, Tennessee, who we've already talked about is probably not all that impressive.
And if you watch that game with your eyeballs, the kicker of Tennessee botched that game. Tennessee should have won.
Yeah, versus Ole Miss. Ole Miss, yeah, they lost to Georgia. That's their only loss, but they have a really good win against Oklahoma on the road. They blew out Tulane. Yeah, they've got a couple of close games. They beat LSU home. It was pretty close. They survived a scare from Washington State, but they went on the road at Kentucky and beat them more comfortably than Texas did. And don't even talk to Hugh Freeze about Kentucky. So, yeah, I think Ole Miss is a better body of work despite the head-to-head.
At number 5, BYU. This week, the game day game, playing at not the middle of the night. Huge game against Texas Tech.
I think it's a midday kickoff, isn't it?
Sure is.
That's crazy. I think this is a tough road environment for the Cougars. I do not have them winning this game against Texas Tech. I think the Red Raiders are going to win it. I think what matters here is how close BYU can keep it. The closer they can keep it, the better their playoff hopes are, and the better the Big 12's hopes are of getting a second team in.
At number 4, Texas A&M.
I mean, bye week for the Aggies. This week they got a big game against Missouri. I mean, it feels like every game's a big game on an SEC schedule. But I think Mike Elko and company, Marcel Reed, I think that they're going to do great. Missouri, without Bo Babula, probably not more than a speed bump for the Aggies. At least that's my read on it. I'll eat my words if I'm wrong. But that's how it feels like it's shaken out.
remaining schedule: Missouri, host South Carolina, host Samford, and then they go to Austin, which now looks like a much tougher game after Vanderbilt loses.
I mean, I could see them losing that game. I really could. But then you'd have an 11-1 Texas A&M, regardless of how the SEC race shakes out, they would be in the playoffs.
At number 3, gasp, Indiana. While everyone else has Indiana at 2, I've heard some arguments for Indiana at 1, Indiana at 3 here in week 11.
You want to know my hot take? I think Indiana is going to be the committee's number 1 when they release their rankings Tuesday night.
Spicy.
I mean, you're supposed to do it. It's a blind ballot process. If they haven't changed it a lot from last year, they look at all of these blind metrics for teams, and then they narrow it down to 3 teams, and then they take those 3 teams and they rank them 1 through 3, right? And Indiana's been so dominant across the board, even more so than Ohio State. Like, I think that Indiana might be the committee's number 1. I'm probably wrong, but that's my hot take.
Indiana's remaining schedule: they go to Penn State, host Wisconsin, they go to Purdue. The dominance
Cakewalk.
will most likely continue. I can say
Guys-
that with a fairly high confidence.
Outside of like the top 4 or 5 teams in the Big Ten, there's not a lot there.
I mean, the middle of the Big Ten is really good. And I would say the middle of the Big Ten would be the top of most other conferences, right? Though they would also be the middle of the SEC. But the top of the Big Ten is so much better than the rest of the conference. Probably so much better than the rest of the country.
At number 2, Alabama. This week, they have LSU.
I think if you're LSU and you're that interim coach and you've got a bunch of talented players, like, why not go all out on this game? I think Alabama's got an even bigger target than normal on its back in this game against LSU. I would not be surprised to see LSU pull out a win. Turmoil or no, they're a really talented roster. And yes, it's on the road, but they've had a week to prepare. And yes, Alabama has too, but Alabama might be looking ahead to just the playoffs and the SEC title game. And LSU, with nothing left to lose, could surprise them.
After LSU, Alabama hosts Oklahoma. They host Eastern Illinois, and they finish the season at Auburn. Oklahoma could be a look ahead. It's where the LSU game could get tricky. At number 1, Ohio State, still number 1 in the S&D 50 this week. They crush Penn State. This week they have Purdue. Ohio State and Indiana are on a crash course for Indianapolis.
Our model loves Ohio State still. Even though they're not getting any credit in the model for the win against Texas because it was so long ago, it just establishes to the eye that this team truly is incredible. There's not very many flaws at all, but Indiana could expose them in that title game. We'll see if one or the other gives a blueprint to the competition for the playoffs. Yeah, I think the only way that a bye goes to a non-Big Ten or SEC team is at this point if BYU runs the table and is 13-0. I don't know how you don't give them a bye. But
Correct. That's the only way.
Right, but because they're undefeated, like a 12-1 Texas Tech's not going to get it. A 12-1 Virginia is not going to get it. Like the one loss will set you back from the SEC and the Big Ten for the bye. So I think BYU is the only team with a realistic shot at getting to 13-0. Not only just because they haven't lost yet, but because they actually have a path to do that. They're the only team outside of the Big Ten and the SEC, barring a collapse of one of those fields, of getting a bye.
That wraps up the S&D 50 for Week 11. Our Week 11 Conference Index. Here's where we count up the number of teams in the S&D 50 by conference and look at the average rating of each conference against each other.
You know, we don't track on here how many teams they go up or down. We do that for like that average rating, as you can see. But it's worth noting that the ACC and the American inched a little bit closer this week. The ACC lost a team with Wake Forest dropping out, and the American got one back with East Carolina jumping in. So even though there's a rating gap between those two, and when you talk about averages, that can be hard to overcome. But the American is really catching up to the ACC for that title of 4th best conference in America.
Week 11 Conference Quads. This is where we take the 4 best teams in each conference, group them in sets of 4, and see how this shakes out.
Yeah, so our conference quads, this is our way of trying to look at the conference in segments, and we had some shaking up this week. We had the SEC B group pass the ACC A group for the 4th spot. So it's always been, for a while, it's been top 4 in the SEC, then top 4 in the Big 10, then top 4 in the Big 12. Then we had the top 4 in the ACC next, which is what you would expect, right? Power 4, best 4 teams, best 4 groups. But the SEC B group of Texas, Oklahoma, Missouri, and Vanderbilt actually passed the ACC A group of Virginia, Louisville, Pitt, and Georgia Tech because Miami lost a lot of points and fell with their loss. The Big 10 B group was 7th. They also passed the American A group. They move up to 6th. The SEC C group was 10th, and they actually move up to 8th. So the SEC has the number 1, number 4, and number 8 spot on this list. The Big 12 B group fell a spot, and the ACC B group of Miami, Duke, SMU, and Florida State sliding in for that 10th spot. They knock out the Mountain West A group, who's been suffering with Boise State's collapse. Interestingly, the Mountain West group actually fell 2 spots. You don't see it here. On the heels of the ACC B group is actually the Sun Belt A group. So we'll see if the Sun Belt makes an appearance in the conference quads next week.
Our Week 11 playoff picture. If the S&D 50 was the sole decision maker for the college football playoff, this is how it would shake out in Week 11.
And if the playoffs happen today, just to be clear for people watching, this is not a prediction of how the playoff would shake out. This is if the playoffs happen today, and we assume that the highest rated team was also the conference champion, this is how it would look. You'd have BYU hosting American champion and 12th seeded North Texas, who's ranked 16th right now. In the 5-12 matchup, the winner of that would go play number 4 Texas A&M in the Cotton Bowl. The 6-11 matchup would be Ole Miss against number 11 Virginia, number 12 in the rankings, but number 11 in the seeding, and the only ACC team here. They would play Ole Miss. The winner of that game would go to Indiana, or go play Indiana in the Orange Bowl. The 7-10 matchup would be a crazy fun one. That would be Notre Dame hosting Utah. A red-hot Utah team. That would be crazy to see those two teams hot late in the year meeting in the playoffs. The winner would go play SEC champion Alabama in the Sugar Bowl. And then the 8-9 matchup would be an all-SEC affair, Georgia hosting Texas. Again, that would be a rematch. Same site and everything. Winner would go play Ohio State in the Rose Bowl. 3 teams missing out here would be Texas Tech, ranked 11th, but bumped out because of conference champion rules, Louisville, and Michigan. Well, Drew and I were actually talking, Jacob, we were talking off the podcast just the other day, and it is Andrew's belief that the 5 seed is actually the best seed in the whole playoffs.
Under current construction.
How would you do it differently though? I don't know how you can't, if you're going to do this forced inclusion of conference champions. I mean, unless you artificially give them a home game and make them like the 8 seed, and then you just make the 9 seed the best spot. Actually, hot take, they should do that. If you don't get a bye and you're a conference champion, you should at least get a home game for the first round. Because then that would like give you, that's the true credit for being the conference champion, is that you're guaranteed to at least host. That would be fun.
That would screw up the seeding again, like it was last year. Even though I love that Boise got a bye last year.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't agree with the top 4. I like how they're doing it this year with the top 4 seeds and the byes. I like that it's not a guarantee of a bye for your conference title. But like here's what it would be. No need to redo this graphic. I'm just kind of rolling this on the spot. If you rearrange these seeds, you'd still have number 5 BYU hosting game as the Big 12 champion. Nothing would change in the SEC and Big 10, but it would be number 5 BYU hosting number 12 Utah. Actually, it'll be a rematch of that game. Then you'd have number 6 would still host Ole Miss, but they would host Texas, who would be seeded 11th. And then in the 7 seed spot, you would have Virginia, who would host Georgia. And then in the 8 seed spot, you'd have North Texas, who would host Notre Dame.
It's an interesting take. Looking at this playoff picture, my takeaway is that I think Ohio State kind of gets a bad draw here because getting Georgia instead of a BYU or North Texas or a Virginia or an Ole Miss just seems like a tougher path to me. I would rather play BYU than Georgia, though,
That's
today.
true. And the thing is, too, it obviously can't shake out this way. Georgia and Texas still have to play. BYU and Texas Tech, who's just outside of this, still have to play. Like, title games aside, you've still got a lot of dominoes that are going to fall. You may not even have like a one-loss Georgia, a one-loss Ole Miss, a two-loss Texas, even in the mix come the end of November. So, or you could have Texas winning the SEC still, getting the bye. That would be so crazy.
Our Week 11 G5 Top 25. These are the top 25 group of 5 teams according to the S&D 50 model. I told you this last week. Teams 13 through 25 flip around more than anything I've ever seen in any poll. But North Texas is at the top of the G5 this week with James Madison right behind him.
Yeah, I mean, you look at this, it's American, Sunbelt, American, Mountain West, American, Conference USA, Mountain West. I mean, this is the Americans' G5 spot to lose. And we got a listener question that said, hey, why isn't UConn on here? Why isn't Washington State on here? The answer is because those teams don't actually compete for the G5 playoff spot. We decided not to include them on this list. Had we included them, just for reference, UConn would have been the only team to make it on here. Neither Washington State or Oregon State were rated high enough. UConn would come in 18th, just behind Jacksonville State and just ahead of Arkansas State. And they would knock Liberty, who's currently 25th, out of the G5 top 25.
And speaking of UConn, they have a big game this week against Duke. And it's funny, they could hand Duke a 4th loss and it wouldn't affect Duke's standing in the ACC at all. And we could have a 4-loss Duke team come out of the ACC.
You want to know what would be maniacal about that? Picture this with me, because people forget this, but the guarantee is not that it's a Power 4 champion for the first 4 in a G5. It's just the 5 highest ranked conference champions. If you had a 4-loss Duke as the ACC champion, there's a real situation where they are ranked lower than a 12-1 North Texas and a 12-1 James Madison. That would be wild.
Week 11, games to watch. These are the games that the model has identified as the closest rating between 2 teams. So on Wednesday, Kent State goes to Ball State. That's number 120 going to 125. Northern Illinois goes to Toledo, 118 versus 106. That's your Wednesday slate. Thursday, you have Georgia Southern, number 100, going to Appalachian State, number 96. And on Friday, Tulane goes to Memphis, number 40 versus number 43. The rating differential between Memphis and Tulane is 23 points.
That's tight. I think that game is one of the knockout punches that the American is looking for to get teams out of contention. And if I'm the American, I'm rooting for Memphis. If I'm a conference American junkie, I probably want Memphis to win this game to minimize the chaos that could come out of a Tulane victory.
Our Saturday slate of competitive games, Temple, number 76 Temple, going to number 89 Army, number 131 Bowling Green going to number 127 Eastern Michigan, number 85 Missouri State going to number 78 Liberty, number 112 UAB going to 114 Rice, and number 84 Maryland going to number 91 Rutgers.
UAB Rice is the unofficial Sickos game of the week. A rating difference of 17.1. These are teams that have surprise wins over big-time foes, lots of losses to mediocre opponents. It'll be interesting to see how this game goes in Houston.
Our Saturday evening slate, Week 11, Kansas, Arizona, Oregon, Iowa, Texas State, Louisiana, Florida State, Clemson, and Nebraska, UCLA, the closest rated teams in this slate. Number 108, Texas State, going to number 105, Louisiana.
Florida State Clemson is the battle of what could have been. I mean, the rating difference between them is pretty wide. It's about as wide as we consider for our model. 180 is the cutoff where we say once it's 180, the rating, the resumes aren't that similar. But Florida State Clemson, how bad do you have to feel to have this game be on the ACC network? This could have been an ABC primetime game.
Florida State Clemson is my unofficial sicko game of the week because you've got to feel sick if you're a fan of either one of these teams watching it. But Oregon, Iowa, this is the game to watch of all these games in this Saturday afternoon slate. The Kinnick Wave, Spencer mentioned it earlier. It gets me emotional every time. Iowa will be ready. I don't know if they still have the pink bathrooms in Iowa, but the locker room in Iowa was designed by a psychologist who worked for the university, and he turned the locker room pink in the bathrooms to make people feel less masculine. And there's some statistic out there where it's proven to be true. So we will see if Oregon can overcome all of that. But good luck to Oregon going to Iowa.
Man, we keep this up. We're going to have a bathrooms of the FBS segment. All right, you need to go just wander out to yonder fence. I don't know what school that was.
Northwestern State.
Northwestern of where?
Iowa has an entirely pink visitors locker room. Look it up. It is pale pink. Every locker, the walls, the floors, the ceiling, it is done on purpose. We will see if Dan Lanning can overcome a night game at Penn State and the pink locker rooms of Kinnick Stadium.
That's hilarious.
And it wasn't a problem for Kurt Signetti and Fernando Mendoza, so...
It was actually not a cakewalk, though.
I
So
will
it
say
did work. It was the closest game Indiana has played this year.
And they made it closer than it needed to be intentionally by making just like a cerebral move and taking that safety. I loved that from Indiana. We'll see if Oregon can put up the same kind of fight. I actually think Iowa's going to win this one.
That wraps up the podcast for this week. Spencer, thank you for being here.
A pleasure as always. I love it. I love the sicko games. You'll see me taking in the Maction this week. It's going to be a great Saturday slate. Can't wait to see how it all shakes out.
Jacob, thank you for being here.
So happy to be here. Looking forward to some CUSA weeknights.
Enjoy week 11, everyone. Again, if you're not subscribed, subscribe. We will be here next week. Enjoy the college football rankings reveal. Have a safe week, everybody.
Bye.